A poor waitress pulled a bold move to save a collapsing customer in a modest diner. 7 days later, she was stunned to learn that the man she helped was not just an ordinary customer. He was a billionaire with a secret. Emma, a young waitress working endless shifts to support her ailing mother, never imagined that one decision would turn her life upside down. When she noticed the sharply dressed man collapse mid-meal, her instincts took over. Her boss warned her to step away, scolding her for wasting time on a wealthy, troublesome customer. But Emma refused to stand by and watch. Against all odds, she chose to help. Little did she know, that single act of courage would set in motion a chain of events she could never have foreseen. What happened next? And why did this billionaire return to Emma's world exactly 7 days later? Stay tuned to uncover a story of bravery, secrets, and an unexpected twist that changed her life forever. A quiet diner on the edge of town hummed softly with the sound of clinking cutlery and low conversations. The storm outside added a rhythm of its own, with raindrops tapping against the windows. Emma stood behind the counter, jotting in her worn leather journal. Her eyes occasionally flicked up, observing the familiar faces of regulars. This was her life, routine and predictable, yet it held the weight of her unspoken dreams. Her journal was not just a notebook, it was her escape. Every observation, every fleeting thought went into it. One day, these pages will mean something, she told herself, though doubt always lingered at the back of her mind. That evening, the diner door swung open with a gust of cold air, drawing everyone's attention. A man stepped inside, sharply dressed but visibly weary. His tailored coat and polished shoes stood in stark contrast to the diner's modest interior. Emma's eyes followed him as he chose a corner booth, sitting quietly with a contemplative expression. "Emma, stop staring," her boss barked from the kitchen window. He was a man who measured time in dollars and customers in tips. "Rich folk like him don't need your help. Focus on the tables that matter." Emma's cheeks flushed as she turned her attention back to the counter. Yet she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the man than his appearance suggested. The storm intensified outside, matching the unease building in Emma's chest. As she served other customers, she kept glancing at the man. He was not eating, just staring out the window, his fingers lightly tapping the table. Something about his demeanor felt out of place, detached yet deeply troubled. Suddenly, the man's hand reached for his coffee cup, but it slipped from his grip. His body slumped forward, and a gasp rippled through the diner. Plates clattered, chairs scraped, and murmurs of confusion filled the air. Emma froze for a split second before rushing toward him. "Emma, don't get involved," her boss shouted, but she ignored him. Her instincts took over as she reached the man's side. His breathing was shallow, his complexion pale. She called out to him, "Sir, can you hear me?" But there was no response. Grabbing her phone, she dialed for emergency services while checking his pulse. The other customers watched, some whispering, others simply gawking. Emma felt the weight of their stares but pushed it aside, focusing on the man in front of her. Her boss stormed over, his face red with anger. "You're wasting time. If he's got problems, he should go to a fancy hospital, not here." Emma shot him a sharp look. "He needs help, and I won't stand by and do nothing." Her voice was firm, silencing him momentarily. Minutes felt like hours, but the paramedics arrived swiftly. They loaded the man onto a stretcher, commending Emma for her quick actions. As they wheeled him out, one of them paused and said, "You might have saved his life tonight." Not everyone would have acted so fast. Emma nodded, her heart still racing. She turned back to the diner, where her boss scowled and muttered under his breath, "You'll regret this, Emma. People like him do not appreciate anything." But Emma was not listening. She glanced at the corner booth, now empty except for a napkin with faint handwriting. Picking it up, she read the words, "Thank you. This moment will change your life." The storm outside began to subside, but inside Emma, a different kind of storm was brewing. Questions swirled in her mind. Who was this man? Why had he come to this diner? And what did he mean by those words? For the first time in years, Emma felt a strange sense of anticipation. Little did she know, the events of that evening were only the beginning of a journey that would challenge everything she thought she knew about herself, others, and the world. The diner buzzed with its usual hum of clinking cutlery and murmured conversations, but Emma barely noticed. Her boss's voice cut sharply through the background noise. "Why can you not just follow the rules, Emma?" he snapped, slamming a clipboard onto the counter. "You had one job: serve the tables and keep things moving. But no, you decided to play hero." Emma stood there, her apron clutched tightly in her hands. He was collapsing. Someone had to help. Her boss sighed in frustration. "Someone else could have handled it. You wasted time, Emma. And do you know what that means for this place? For me?" Her voice trembled, but she stood firm. "I could not stand by and watch. It is not in me to ignore someone in need." The penalty came swiftly, a deduction from her already meager paycheck. He tossed the new payment sheet onto the counter with a final glare. Emma bit her lip and walked away, her heart heavy. At home, the weight of the day only deepened. Her mother lay on the worn-out sofa, her breathing labored, her pale face etched with both love and pain. "How was work, honey?" her mother asked softly, though her voice carried exhaustion. Emma forced a smile. "It was fine, Ma. I managed. How are you feeling?" Her mother's weak smile faltered. "Oh, you know me, tough as nails." Emma knelt beside her and held her hand. She had sacrificed everything to care for her: late nights, missed opportunities, and dreams she could barely recall anymore. One day, her mother whispered, "You will write your own story, and it will be beautiful." Emma's throat tightened, and she nodded. That night, her mother's words echoed in her mind. Days later, when Emma spotted James stepping into the diner, her breath caught. He was the same man, the one she had saved that chaotic evening. He moved quietly, his presence subtle yet commanding. As he approached the counter, he looked directly at her. "I came to thank you," he said simply. His words were calm, but there was something in his gaze, a weight she could not define. "You do not have to thank me," Emma replied, her tone humble yet firm. Before she could refuse, James left a tip on the table, a sum far greater than she had ever seen in her life. She stared at it, her pride and desperation battling fiercely inside her. "I cannot accept this," she said, her voice louder than she intended. James studied her for a moment before nodding, as if he understood something unspoken. "It is not about the money," he said softly. "It is about what you deserve." She shook her head, placing the bills back on the table. "I help because I care, not because I expect anything in return." Later that day, whispers filled the break room. "Did you hear about him?" one coworker murmured, glancing toward James' empty seat. "They say he is some big shot with a shady past," another replied. Emma frowned, their words prickling her thoughts. Could James really be who they said he was? As she cleared the table he had occupied, her eyes fell on a small note folded neatly beneath his coffee cup. "There is more to life than what you see," it read. "Sometimes it takes a bold step to discover it." Her fingers trembled as she held the note, her mind racing with questions. What did he mean? Why had he left this for her? That night, as she stared at the note, Emma reflected on the choices she had made. Her mind replayed the moments she had rushed to help him, the boss's anger, and her mother's faith in her strength. "How far can kindness take you?" she whispered aloud, the words both a question and an answer. And though her world felt fragile, Emma could not shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something far greater than she had ever imagined. Emma could not shake the thoughts lingering in her mind. James had left more questions than answers. His polished demeanor, his cryptic behavior, everything about him felt like a puzzle she could not ignore. Was it curiosity driving her, or something deeper? She tried to focus on her work, but every moment she had saved replayed in her head. Who was he? And why did he choose to return to the same diner, day after day? James began showing up more frequently. Each time, he quietly chose the same corner table, away from the bustling crowd. He ordered the same coffee, left generous tips, and maintained the same reserved demeanor. It unsettled Emma, and it did not go unnoticed by the other staff. Some whispered about his wealth. Others speculated on his secrets, but Emma found herself watching him more closely than she liked to admit. There was something peculiar about him, something hidden in plain sight. Emma noticed the scar on his hand, The way he avoided direct answers to casual questions, and the way powerful-looking figures occasionally visited him at the diner. Her instincts told her there was more to his story than he let on. Yet, she wrestled with herself. Was it her place to pry? Or was this quiet curiosity leading her somewhere she was meant to go? One day, as James sat alone, a man in a tailored suit approached him. Their conversation was hushed, but Emma could sense the tension in their body language. The man leaned closer, his voice barely above a whisper. Emma caught fragments of words: deal, town, and risk. Her heart raced. What kind of business could tie someone like James to their small town? She could not help but wonder if this was a web of connections far beyond what she understood. James's interactions with Emma grew more personal over time. He started sharing bits of his past, small, cryptic pieces that hinted at the weight he carried. He spoke of betrayal, of those he trusted who turned against him. There was loneliness in his voice, though he masked it well. Emma wanted to believe he was sincere, but a part of her remained wary. Was this vulnerability real, or was it part of something larger? Emma found herself feeling conflicted. She felt guilty for her growing curiosity about James' life. She questioned her motives. Was she trying to help him or simply satisfy her own questions? At the same time, she could not ignore the kindness he showed, even if it felt calculated at times. She wondered if his presence in her life was a twist of fate or something far more intentional. One quiet evening, James invited her to an art gallery opening. The invitation caught her off guard. She hesitated but agreed, curiosity outweighing caution. The gallery was unlike anything Emma had ever seen. The walls were adorned with vibrant pieces created by underprivileged artists. Emma's heart swelled as she realized the event was dedicated to a cause she had always cared about. She glanced at James, her thoughts racing. How did he know this mattered to her? What was his true motive? As Emma admired a painting, she overheard James speaking on the phone. His tone was low, almost cold. "Make sure the truth stays buried," he said. Emma froze, her mind spinning. What truth was he talking about? And why did it sound so dangerous? Suspense tightened around her like a thread pulled taut. She knew this moment would change everything. Emma walked away from the gallery that night with more questions than she had answers. James had brought light to causes she cared about, yet his words hinted at shadows she could not ignore. Every moment with him felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, unsure whether to step forward or turn back. Her thoughts swirled. Was James a man carrying the weight of his past, or someone hiding truths too heavy to reveal? Emma could not get this side, but she knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning of the journey that would change her life forever. Emma's day began like any other. As she sipped her lukewarm coffee during her short break, her eyes wandered to the stack of newspapers left behind by a customer. She absent-mindedly flipped through the pages until a bold headline stopped her in her tracks. James Calloway, billionaire philanthropist or corporate manipulator. Her breath caught in her throat. James, the quiet man who had sat in the corner of the diner, the man she saved, was a billionaire. The words on the page blurred as questions flooded her mind. How could he have hidden so much? Why did he come to the diner in the first place? Emma's hands trembled as she read about his company's scandal. Allegations of exploiting smaller businesses, deals that jeopardized livelihoods. Was James the same man she thought she had come to understand? Unable to contain her emotions, Emma confronted him later that day. Her voice, usually calm and measured, quivered with anger. "You lied to me," she said, standing at his table. "You made me believe you were someone else." James looked up from his coffee, his expression unreadable. "I never lied, Emma," he replied quietly. "You never asked who I was." Her frustration boiled over. "You knew I would not. You sat here day after day, acting like you were just another person trying to get by. Do you have any idea how it feels to find out this way?" James leaned back, his gaze steady. "I did not come here to deceive you. I came here because I wanted to be treated like a human being. And you saw me as more than just a man with money or power. Do you think I get that often?" Emma's fists clenched at her sides. "So what? You admire my honesty, my courage. Is that what you tell yourself to justify this? You sat there, knowing the truth, while I opened up to you." James's voice softened, and for the first time, Emma saw a flicker of vulnerability. You were the only person who treated me like I mattered, not because of what I own, but because of who I am. The conversation grew heated, emotions spilling over. Emma's voice broke as she said, "You do not understand what it feels like to work every day, just to survive, to hold on to dreams you cannot afford, and then someone like you walks in, with everything handed to you, pretending to be one of us." James's calm demeanor cracked slightly. "Do you think it was easy for me? I was not handed anything, Emma. I fought for every piece of what I have. And yes, I made mistakes. I trusted the wrong people, hurt others in the process. But do not assume my life has been without cost." His words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. For the first time, Emma saw him differently, not as a stranger with secrets, but as someone who carried his own burdens. He spoke of betrayal, of allies who had turned against him, of decisions he regretted but could never take back. "I live with the guilt of what I have done," James said, his voice almost a whisper, "and it is not something money can erase." Emma felt a pang of empathy, though she tried to fight it. "That does not excuse what you have done or how you dragged me into this," she said, her voice softer now. "You could have been honest with me." James nodded slowly. "You are right, but I have spent so long guarding myself that I do not know how to be honest anymore. I saw something in you, Emma, something I lost a long time ago. That is why I kept coming back." The conversation left Emma torn. She spent the next few days wrestling with her emotions. Was it possible to forgive someone who had deceived her, even if his reasons were rooted in pain? Could she separate the man she had come to know from the public figure whose actions had hurt so many? As she reflected, moments of kindness from James replayed in her mind. The way he had supported her dreams of writing, the way he listened when no one else seemed to care. These memories offered a glimmer of hope, but doubt still lingered. The turning point came when Emma overheard him speaking on the phone. His words sent a chill down her spine. "We cannot let the truth come out," he said. "It would destroy everything." Emma's heart raced. What truth was he hiding? And what would it mean for her if she uncovered it? The pieces of the puzzle were there, but the picture they formed was still unclear. One thing was certain, this story was far from over. James sat quietly across from Emma, his expression as unreadable as ever. "I want to offer you something," he began, his tone calm yet earnest. Emma's brows furrowed, suspicion clouding her face. "You want to offer me something?" she repeated, her voice tinged with disbelief. "What exactly are you trying to do, James?" He leaned forward, choosing his words carefully. "There is a foundation I've supported for years. It helps young creatives, writers, artists, musicians, find opportunities to showcase their work. I want to connect you with them. Your writing deserves to be seen." Emma crossed her arms defensively. "And why would you do that? Is this your way of buying my forgiveness?" James shook his head, the corners of his mouth tightening. "No, Emma, this is not about forgiveness. It's about gratitude. You saw me as a person, not a symbol of wealth or power, and that meant more to me than I can explain." Her gaze softened slightly, but her wariness remained. "I do not need charity, James." "This isn't charity," he replied, his voice steady. "It's an opportunity. One that you've earned, not because of me, but because of your own talent and perseverance." Emma looked away, the weight of his words sinking in. Her mind raced with doubt and hope, tangled together in a way that left her feeling exposed. For days, Emma wrestled with the decision. Could she trust him? Could she let herself believe that his intentions were genuine? She found herself staring at the blank pages of her journal, her pen poised but unmoving. Finally, with a shaky breath, she made her choice. "If this is about gratitude, then I'll accept," she told James the next time they met. Her voice was quiet but firm. "But I'm doing this for myself, not for you." A faint smile crossed his face. That's exactly how it should be. As Emma began to explore the world of writing with the foundation support, she felt a flicker of hope she hadn't experienced in years. She wrote late into the nights, pouring her heart into stories that captured her struggles, her triumphs, and the lessons she had learned along the way. Meanwhile, James channeled his energy into his foundation, finding solace in giving back. Inspired by Emma's courage, he sought to make amends for the mistakes that haunted him. he reached out to communities affected by his past business decisions, determined to create positive change where there had once been harm. One day, as Emma sat by her mother's side, reading aloud from one of her latest pieces, she felt an overwhelming sense of peace. Her mother's smile, though faint, was filled with pride. "Your father would be so proud of you," her mother whispered. Emma's throat tightened, but she managed to nod. Later that week, Emma wrote an article that captured the essence of her journey. She wrote about trust, forgiveness, and the strength it took to overcome doubt and fear. The words flowed easily, as though they had been waiting for this moment all along. "I learned that trust isn't given, it's earned," she wrote. "And forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, it means choosing to move forward, even when the pain lingers. Life will test us in ways we never expect, but it's how we rise that defines us." When James read the article, he felt a rare sense of clarity. He saw himself in her words, but more importantly, he saw a version of himself he wanted to become. Their paths diverged not long after. As they said their goodbyes, James extended his hand. Emma hesitated, then shook it firmly. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" she asked. "For reminding me that redemption isn't about erasing the past," James replied. "It's about creating a better future." Emma nodded, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "And thank you for giving me a chance to find my voice." As they parted ways, the sun rose over the horizon, casting a warm glow over the world around them. For Emma, it marked the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with possibility and purpose. For James, it was a chance to rewrite his story, one act of kindness at a time. Both carried the lessons of their journey forward, knowing that even the darkest moments could lead to light. Emma's story reminds us of an important truth. Bold choices often lead to extraordinary opportunities. In the face of uncertainty and doubt, she chose to take a chance that changed the course of her life. Her journey was not just about overcoming struggles. It was about finding strength in vulnerability, discovering trust in the most unexpected ways, and embracing possibilities that seemed out of reach. To anyone who feels stuck, uncertain, or overwhelmed by life's challenges, Emma's journey carries a message. Courage does not mean being fearless. It means taking a step forward, even when the path is unclear. If this story resonated with you, share it with someone who might find inspiration in Emma's journey, because sometimes all it takes is hearing the right story to spark a change. And if you believe in the power of real-life stories that touch the heart and inspire action, join us. Subscribe to hear more tales of resilience, hope, and transformation. Together, let's spread a message of inspiration to those who need it most.